Hey, shalom, everybody. The title of today's message, today's podcast, whatever you want to call it, is that anti-Semitism makes no sense. And uh, lately, I mean, this has been in the news, is that there's been some celebrities who've come out and have actual anti-Semitic views, and I don't get it. I don't understand. These are very wealthy, very popular people who feel comfortable enough to express this stuff in the public sphere, even after they're being um, kind of punished for it or having negative consequences. They won't even relent. And I have to say that this has made no sense to me from my youth. None. Zip. That racism or bigotry or any type of um, prejudicial type stuff, even before I was a messianic believer, even when I was secular and when I was, as a child in the church of my parents, it just never made sense to me. I've always bought into Martin Luther King's concept of judging a person based on the content of their character, and that being that, and as far as a secular type thing. And so, from a secular view, anti-Semitism just doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense, and I'm going to get into the religious view here in a second. But from a secular perspective, you have a group of people who are self-sufficient, educated, contribute to society, and want to be left alone. What? Why would you ever have any type of interaction or any type of thing, any type of perspective other than, hey, well, I mean, I don't even understand how the topic would come up when because Jewish people tend to just, you know, kind of be a kind of a closed society, and they do their thing. And I don't understand why somebody would come to the conclusion of some kind of conclusion to even think negatively about them or even to think about them at all. And when you have any group of people, any demographic, as I wish we didn't have demographics. I prefer if we could all just be Americans or Christians or Westerners. But if you're going to have a demographic and you see one that's self-sufficient, that's educated, um, why would you not have a favorable view of that group of people, regardless of how they determine their demographic? So from a pure secular perspective, I just want to beat this into the ground that it does not make any sense to me at all, especially to the point of having some kind of bias to where you're going to voice this thing. And this group of people have had a bad time of it. I mean, throughout history, the Jewish people have had a pretty rough go as far as the people go, and I don't know why anybody would have this anti-Semitism. But now I'm going to look at it from an actual biblical standpoint as to why anti-Semitism makes no sense as well. And so here in Romans 11:17 through 18, but if some branches are broken off and you being a wild olive were grafted in among them and became partaker with them of the rich root of the olive tree, do not be arrogant toward the branches. But if you are arrogant, remember that it is not you who supports the root, but the root who supports you. This we're supposed to have some humility with respect to our salvation, and salvation comes from the Jews. Salvation, Yeshua's name is Hebrew for salvation. He's of the line of David, and he's the Jewish Messiah, which then makes him the world's Messiah. But Christians, whether we be messianic or otherwise, are grafted into a branch that already existed. We are adopted into the family of God. That family already existed, brothers and sisters, and it existed with the Jewish people. Now, I know in modern parlance, a lot of people don't want to say Jews. They want to say Jews are just Judah and Benjamin and Levi, and then you have these lost 10 tribes. But the reality of it is that even in the New Testament and from the Maccabees on, the word Jew has meant, anybody who believed in Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob and kept the Torah, all the way up through the New Testament, where the word Jew is used. Paul even uses the word to represent all of them, him being a Benjamite himself. So um, we serve the same God as Moses. And our foundation is the Tanakh. That's why this country used to have the Ten Commandments all over the place. You may not realize this, but the Ten Commandments are from the Old Testament. They're Hebrew. They're Israelite. And I could go on, but this is one of the key concepts I learned when I read the Bible the first time. Is that there's really not a piece of paper between Malachi and Matthew. It's a continuation of the faith of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and it's one thing. So this is another place where we're grafted into something that existed. So why would we ever be arrogant toward the branches? Doesn't make sense. The next part is pure New Testament. Here is in Acts 2 and Acts 4, we see thousands of people baptized. Those people were Jews, brothers and sisters. There's this thing out there that the Jews didn't accept Yeshua or whatever. It's not true. It's not true at all. The first believers for a very, very long time were predominantly Jewish people. And the faith went forth from Zion through the synagogue systems. Paul goes to the synagogues to start talking about the Messiah because the Gentiles don't know who a Messiah is. The Gentiles were polytheistic. They had a completely different religion. So and Paul went forth to preach about the Jewish Messiah to the Jewish people, and then over time you start to get a lot of Gentiles coming into the faith. And then so many so that when Paul had to go back to Jerusalem and convene the Grand Council to say, hey, what are we going to do with all these people? We're not going to convert them to Judaism, but what are we going to do with them? Because what's happening with these Gentile believers? They're accepting that Yeshua is the Messiah, that Jesus is the Christ. They're accepting the commandments, and they're showing up at synagogue. And all the Jewish officials are like, okay, well, we're going to convert them to Judaism. And they said, wait a minute, this is something different. Let's go and have a council and see what we're going to do about that. And the ultimate conclusion of the council, it ends with, from Moses from ancient generation has in every city those who preach him, since he is read in the synagogues every Shabbat. So these Gentiles had to start out with a very easy list of things to do, but then as they attended synagogue and heard the Torah read every Shabbat, they're going to learn and they're going to start to gravitate their behavior towards that of the Bible, of the Torah, and they're going to get closer to Yahweh and his son that way. So, we have Paul's letter to the Romans, where so many Jews and Gentiles are in one congregation. Paul has a letter to the Romans, which I had up earlier, actually, talks about how they had to deal with that. How they had to deal with these mixed congregations, which we don't have a lot of mixed congregations anymore, if we have any at all. I don't know of any Messianics who attend, traditional Jewish synagogue. We do have Messianic Jewish synagogues, and we have ministries that do that. Our ministry is closer to Messianic. We are Messianic Assembly, so we do actually, do some of that type of Jewish type stuff, but I don't know of any mixed congregations anymore. The lines were drawn a couple hundred years after Yeshua ascended, and then we got into some bad theology, which I'm trying to unpack today. The next part is Hebrews 9:15, Jeremiah 31:31, the new covenant. Who is the new covenant with? The new covenant is with Israel and Judah. There is no covenant with the Gentiles other than like the covenant of the rainbow, where that Yahweh made with all earthly beings, that he wouldn't flood the earth again. But the new covenant, of which Yeshua is the mediator, is with Israel and Judah. And if we don't have a way to connect ourselves with either Israel or Judah, the new covenant is not for us. So to understand that once we accept Yeshua as the Messiah, we accept Jesus as the Christ, we become grafted in to the family of God. We become adopted children of Abraham and heirs according to the promise. The promise that was made to Abraham to make him a father of countless, countless people. We're those countless people through this promise, which is it's laid out in the Old Testament, and the Old Testament was preserved by the Jewish people, and it is to this day. So we have to come to a conclusion here that these are Yahweh's people, and we know that they're blinded until the fullness of the Gentiles comes in, but they're still Yahweh's people, and so we are not to be arrogant toward the branches whatsoever. We have to be grafted in as we look forward to the coming messianic kingdom, where the two sticks will be put together. Israel and Judah are going to be put together, and then we're going to be part of this countless multitude that do what? That we keep the Torah. We're going to keep the Torah in the millennium, and we're going to have a very Old Testament-ish faith, not to the point of sacrificing animals and stuff like that, but we know that the millennium includes everybody going up to Jerusalem to keep the Feast of Tabernacles, to keep Sukkot. So we know that this is not some new religion with a different goal and a different outcome and a different eternity. We know the plan of salvation is laid out through the holy days. It was established at the foundation of the world, which is recorded by the book of Genesis and runs all the way to the book of Revelation. So we need to pray for all people to come to the knowledge of the Messiah, so that all people can be saved. And that which is Yahweh's will is that his desire is for all to come to the knowledge of the truth and accept his son as the Messiah. And now we have to look at this last slide here about the crucifixion, because it runs in anti-Semitic circles, or where foolish people will say that the Jews killed Christ or something to this effect. But we have to understand and that his execution happened exactly at the right time, exactly the right place, and exactly by the right people. And he says, "Behold, we are going up to Jerusalem, and the Son of Man will be delivered to the chief priests and scribes, and they will condemn him to death, and will hand him over to the Gentiles to mock, scourge, and crucify him. And on the third day he will be raised up." So you got to understand, brothers and sisters, that the execution of the Messiah, the blood of the Messiah, his murder, is on both the Jews and the Gentiles. It's on both. We're both responsible. And it happened in a very unique fashion to where he's condemned by the Jews, and then he's turned over to the Gentiles to be executed. And there's no third option, by the way. There's not a third group of people there who are innocent of anything. And so, see, we have to come to grips with the fact that our ancestors, regardless of whether they have Jewish blood in them or they have Gentile blood in them, our ancestors are responsible for the death of the Messiah. The flip side of that, the reason we are all condemned by the blood of Yeshua, is because if we accept that and we repent of our sins and we are baptized, then we have the opportunity for salvation, because salvation is in no other name than Yeshua. So God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son. He loved the world, olam, the whole thing. So remember that. The death was for the whole world. And those who accept him as Messiah have the opportunity of salvation by being adopted children of God. And brothers and sisters, I don't see anywhere in this formula where anti-Semitism makes any sense whatsoever. Shalom, and have a good week.